Travis, my good soul. I had 2 failed marriages, both of whom wives have abandoned our marriage, me. And so I'm an expert on Mormon women. Now, granted, I have struggled to obtain a female audience. They tend to get either offended or the information is too contrary to their feelings, and so they don't understand and abandon me. And before you start thinking I have abandonment issues, that's a psychological manipulation. Psychologists are the ones behind our national security threat, causing the division, and it's a war tactic to divide and conquer. And to know the history, you got to go back to World War II. When the war ended, America and several other countries took in the psychologists who were torturing the Jews and had them working with our CIA to produce what became known as brainwashing techniques. MK Ultra is one of the popular ones that have been declassified from our government. But even simple scene shots in the films that used to be shown in movie theaters, they would test it out to see how effective it would be. So you'd have a pitcher of popcorn or Coca-Cola, and they would see if that would produce an inner trigger to have the audience desire to go buy popcorn and Coca-Cola. And it actually was effective, apparently. And the movie theaters have taken advantage of that and have raised the prices of their popcorn and Coca-Cola as a result. And then, of course, Coca-Cola originally had cocaine in it. So, because of that, my grandpa, Goodsell, was a Pepsi drinker. Had to have his Pepsi. And so there are 3 main women in my life. Sorry, Michelle, I'm not including you. It would be a whole nother video in and of itself to cover Michelle. But it's these religious abuses of mental manipulation from psychology that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have been using on their membership. And in regards to relationships between males and females in the church. And now we see, with the rise of psychology having turned their attack with sexual identity, the church is responding in kind with that attack to further the abuse. It's a good cop, bad cop, but the good cop is actually a bad cop. So don't be fooled by psychology. That's the moral of the story. And yet Mormons are, and Mormon women in particular. Leanne Murdoch is the first victim of my video. She was perfect. I'm putting the best example first. She was first. I did not marry her. However, all I had to do was ask, and she would have said yes. We would have been married. Thus, why she's included in this video. I was at Rick's College, which no longer exists. It was not BYU, Idaho. It's completely different. It's no longer a university. It was a college, or it doesn't exist. Too many changes have happened, and so I was cutting across the what used to be the grass to get to the Man-Waring Center where the cafeteria was, so that I could have dinner. And it was pouring rain. Perfect, beautiful day, evening. And I had just walked past my light post. No longer exists. The bastards took it down. It's not my college anymore. A lot of memories with that light post. And my dad destroyed my artwork on that. And from all of a sudden, I hear this voice, a soft, gentle, angelic voice from behind me, which then immediately put the umbrella over my head, asking if I wanted an umbrella. And female, I'm not going to say no. I love walking in the rain. I said, yeah, sure. And we had dinner together. And from that moment, I made sure to figure out ways to be with her and spend time with her. And I knew she liked me because she said yes. And she had no time for me, and so she had to make time for me. And that was important. That is not taught to the general Mormon female population by their mothers or from their peers. And so a lot of miscommunication happens. Michelle was the Relief Society president. She was the president of the sorority. She was studying child development. And she became Woman of the Year. And so, yeah, if you were to go back into the annals of BYU, Idaho, you will still see her. And it's kind of a warped picture from what they show, but nonetheless, her wedding announcement is not preserved. I was looking for that. I found mine, not hers. Nonetheless. And so, yeah, we spent all our time together. And because of the way Rick's had changed it after I came back from my mission in New York, thus the New York Cabaret and the thumbnail, which I thought was awesome. They required us, as part of our humanities graduation requirements for our associates, that we needed to embrace various forms of culture and art. And so that allowed for us, Michelle and I, to work on that together as dating with the graduation requirements. And so, yeah, all the plays, the dances, and art stuff we all attended, and thus the New York Cabaret. And my glass chalet, destroyed by my dad. And so if she's gotten divorced, as is typical for Mormon marriages, and her 15 kids were probably all married off, I wouldn't have my chalet to match up with hers. Oh, Cinderella. So that dream is gone. But she asked me also to be with her for her lab, for example, when she had to work on a craft project for class and whatever. She asked me to come with her, and other activities where she was involved that I could attend with her. And that was important, that it wasn't just left to me to tell her what we were going to do, that she had an input on what we were going to do. And that's a problem in Mormon marriages, is that because of the older tradition of women obey their husband with a death penalty oath, that men were supposed to tell the women what they were going to do, that they were supposed to ask the women to date, that they were supposed to determine what the woman was supposed to be subjected to on the date, that they were supposed to determine the parameters on the date, and that the woman was just supposed to conform and comply and say yes. And thus, once the man was confident and wanted to marry her in 2 weeks' time, he then proposes and she's required to say yes. My parental situation was not too dissimilar from that. My mom tells her story, and I just cringe. But you have a situation where we were together throughout the whole day and into the evening, where I would be walking her home to her dorm right before close of day, where they lock it up, no men are allowed in, and they then are shackled to their beds for the night. But I noticed she never brought him up. It was me who noticed, because I had figured out it was what was going on, because he had asked the dorm parent by name for her, as he had lots of, every day he had some gift for her, and he was waiting until she got back. And he had dozen roses, long stemmed, he had stuffed animals, chocolates, all sorts of gifts, every single night. And every single night she was with me. And so I seeing him after hearing that he was there for her made me feel more special, because it wasn't just an obligation for her by the church that we were supposed to date and pursue marriage and blah blah blah. She actually chose me over other guys who were vying for her. Like I said, she was perfect. Everybody wanted her because of her status in the church and in the school and among her peers, as she became Woman of the Year. And I didn't really see what she saw in me. And at that time in my life, I honestly did not believe I was worthy enough for her, because of the abuse that the church had done to me. And knowing my economic condition, I had no clue how I was going to support a family. and had no clue what I was going to do. And so when I got to Stephanie, all of that went out the window. And maybe I should do it in 3 separate ones. Do part 1, 2, and 3. But looking back, I still don't understand how I did it, how I pulled it off. Because I really didn't have family support. It ended up being Stephanie's family that supported. And so, in that sense, I can therefore make an educated guess as to what would have happened had I gone through with asking Leanne to marry me. And that would have been a situation where we would have gotten sealed in the Salt Lake Temple, because her family was here in Salt Lake. I even utilized the yearbook that provided addresses to know where her family had lived here in Salt Lake City. And whether or not we stayed in her bedroom after our marriage in the Salt Lake Temple on May 1st, 1992, I don't know. It would have been interesting. I doubt it would be room number 13, though. I'm curious if it would be number 5. And when I get to Karen, you'll understand what I mean by that. And because she was a Murdoch, whether it was Murdoch Travel or Murdoch Automotive, I'm not sure which part her family played in that. I would have likely either gotten a job through the family business, starting at salesman and working my way up, and being her husband, I would have rised up quickly in whatever job I was involved in. Otherwise, going to the University of Utah would have been the other option, as it was in the case of Stephanie. And well, I didn't go to well, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to her. But now knowing what's available at the University of Utah during that time period, I would have gone into Hebrew very likely because of me, and would have excelled. And so it's possible, but I'm not quite sure, because the teacher of Hebrew at the University of Utah did never, ever refer to Paleo Hebrew script. So I'm not quite sure how I would have come across Paleo Hebrew script like I did in Canada with Stephanie. But I would have been influenced to Hebrew. And knowing Joseph Smith's retranslation of the biblical Hebrew text, that still would have been a question on my mind, as I would have wanted to see if Hebrew at the University of Utah would help me answer that question. And would have also found Eva Vasilevska in the Anthropology of the Ancient Middle East. And that is likely that those two connections would have set me on a similar path that I went on with Stephanie with. But then you got to ask yourself, okay, well, would Leanne have supported this? Likely yes, because she was perfect. I remember one date where we were walking between whatever. I had learned from one of my church history classes, or the church history class that I was taking, about the Mormons came to Utah because of their wickedness. They were cast out of the United States. And I shared that with her, and she was surprised. She, like me, didn't know church history. We're not given church history other than what the church writes in manuals for us to know about church history. And there's a lot of missing information, a lot of lies that are in those manuals. And so how well she would have received my continued learning about the ancient languages and the classical languages that made up the Bible, whether that would have been too much for her to handle, like it was with Stephanie and even Karen. But the church purposely suppresses our knowledge, suppresses our study, such that Mormons now believe that study is reading. That if you read and you read the manual, you're studying. And the public school system is partly to blame for that, because you're given books and you have to read the books and you have to know the material to regurgitate on tests. And that creates problems with our education, as we don't know the particular subject matters. And then colleges continue that same pattern of giving you textbooks which cost $1 billion, and you have to regurgitate the information for your test, and then at the end of the semester you can sell back your textbook for $2. I want my $2. But the particular classes I took were the ones I chose to take for my interest, which I had no idea it would be turned into a career, because it doesn't exist. I had to create it. I created my education, created my career field, because of Joseph Smith being Mormon and my being Mormon. And but being her husband, I would have been promoted, just like in the job, in the church, to high priest by now, easily. Just like my brother was after his PhD scandal at the University of Michigan, where he pulled the religion card to get his PhD and to pass his thesis, because he did not follow his education. He didn't regurgitate it properly and correctly. He had too much of a Mormon religious bias, and they called him on it, and he then pulled the religion card on him. And but I don't do that. And so I would have been, when Todd got to BYU to start teaching before termination, he was immediately put into the high council in his stake when he showed up to church. Because, you're a BYU professor, that means you're approved by an apostle who had to interview you for the job, and thus we're going to make you a high priest. There's sort of it's not nepotism, but it's very similar. It's religious favoritism. And that would have been done to me because of being married to Leanne. Instantly raised up. Could have been bishop, could have been stake president, could have been a 70 representative, could have been an apostle. You don't think so? You don't know Leanne. She was perfect. She's part of the Danite family, as I would not have known. And so, yeah, I would have eventually been faced with a big conundrum, depending on how high up I went in the authority of the church. Would I pull a James Hamula? I'm out. I've got to get out of here. And have to go into silence. Would she then divorce me? Those are questions that I didn't know her well enough to know in retrospect what would happen. And so because I felt insecure and unworthy of her, I broke it off with her, and that set me on a different path in life. Q had altered my timeline. As Jean-Luc Picard. And so that I experienced a different life as a result. So that's my part one with Leanne, as Mormon women are a big influence in Mormon boys' lives. And they alter our course in life, even though there's the tendency to force us to conform and comply to their will for us because they know what's best. But I get more into that with Stephanie.